today we're covering brand audits. Good news is I generally think you can do quite a bit of a brand audit yourself. You don't always have to get in consultants or, an agency. You can do a fair bit of it yourself, which is always good news. And then you can get people in to help you with key areas that you identify. So, why do a brand audit? Well, I'm a big believer that, even if you don't change, the world around you will. And are you still positioning yourself how your customers like to interact? Because the way people buy, the way people interact, the way people consume content is always changing. And I feel you have to change with that, even if you've got a really strong business model at the current sort of state. And the example I use all the time is Blockbuster, because actually they had a fantastic business model. It was much better than any other sort of rental company, from the reason that they didn't even have to buy the videos. I was going to say DVDs, but I think it was VHS sort of back then. They didn't even have to buy them. They actually got given them. They rented them out and they gave a percentage to the publishers. So their costs were actually really low. It was a fantastic business model. But there's that famous story. They had a great opportunity in about year 2000 to buy this little startup. These couple of guys went along and said, "Oh, look, we've got this startup. Do you want to buy it?" I think they wanted 50 million for it, but it sounded a lot of money. But Blockbuster were like, "No, we've got a great business model. We don't need to invest in another startup. We're smashing it." And I should probably mention, actually, this startup was called Netflix. And you can tell what's happened. So even though Blockbuster had that great model, the rest was history, because they didn't move with the times. Things change, and you always need to just check out, what you're doing to make sure, you keep up to date. So generally, I think of, 3 phases within, a brand audit. And it's often just starting with your internal branding. So lots of people, when they think of branding, just think of logos, but that's actually just a visual identity to represent some of your brand. Your brand is every touch point that a customer has. But actually, your brand is people's perception of you. You don't even own your brand. It's basically your reputation and how people feel about you. So how can you influence that? Well, the first thing I always like to do, just, look at your core values. Are they still relevant? Is this how you behave and how you make decisions? Is it still relevant to sort of the current market? And the big one, that the mission, what is the purpose of your brand? What does it aim to achieve for, its customers and the community and the people it serves? And of course, your vision, is the long-term goal of the brand still relevant? If your long-term vision is to be the leading supplier of VHS tapes across the world, then okay, is that still relevant? In fact, they probably still are, because there's no one else doing it. But my point being, what can you change? And if I use someone like Nike as an example, their values are to pretty much empower athletes, innovation, inspiration, to everyone. And I did note it down. Yeah, their mission statement is to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world, with a little asterisk: if you have a body, you're an athlete. And their vision is to create a better world through sport. My mission with Brand Growth Academy is to transform businesses into booming brands through comprehensive, actionable, and engaging brand education. Is that still relevant? So always worth looking internally at just your why, I guess. Am I still doing what, I wanted to do? Does it excite you? Does it engage you? And do your customers actually care? I think a lot of businesses, struggle with this, because their first thought is, I'm going to set up a business to make money. And it's like, no, actually set up a business to solve someone's problem and make an impact, and then the money will follow. If you can solve other people's problems, then, like I say, the money will follow. So then once you've looked at all your internal, I'd like to move on to your external branding. Now, this is, your logo, your print, online advertising, any marketing material, even PR, your website, social media, content marketing, email marketing, anything that you put out that other people can see. And yeah, I often like to look at logos, just because it's relevant to almost every business and everyone understands what a logo is. Is it up to date? You look at the transformation of like Google's logo as it's gone through. They very quickly changed the G to being blue, but then actually just changing, the font that's used, and they removed the shadow and flattened it down. Pepsi also just gone through, it's probably important to say a lot of logos have simplified over the years, and that is because of the change of nature in how we promote our products and services. If you're those complicated logos worked well on a massive billboard back in the day, but if you're a SME, certainly if you're turning over less than a couple of million, you're probably not taking out a billboard in Times Square. Actually, this is now just your social media icon, so your logo needs to be nice and simple. Starbucks have done the same, adaptation. Car companies have done it, where again, a lot of sort of drop text. I really like the way car companies, a lot of them have done it. The only one I disagree with is BMW. I haven't got the version of that up here, but which ended up being a bit rubbish. But most of them, they all like this one from 1995. They had that sort of bevel emboss thing, which was one really famous, but also they did it, I suppose, because it showed like it was a badge on a car. It was 3D, but actually it doesn't work as well for sort of modern applications. So they've flattened it down. I always think it's interesting that Microsoft are the one that actually added an icon as such to theirs. 81. I'm sure that someone else has referenced this. It must be. It just looks like a rock band to me. You want to rock out to Microsoft, but they've simplified and it just looks more modern. And actually, that's 2012. I'm surprised they haven't started to look at some new bits. Maybe they have. Maybe I'm behind the curve, but that's what I recognise as it. And what's really important is actually you're just consistent across all these areas. The presentation I did, whatever it was 4 or 6 weeks ago, was all about consistency, because actually we love consistency. They reckon you need, between 5 and 7 touch points for someone to want to buy from you. And if that's the case, if all of your touch points look different, then that touch point isn't going to be attributed to you. So you're going to need even more touch points. So you need to make sure the logo is used consistently, the tone of voice, the colors, all of that. And when I say every touch point, I mean, on sales sheets, product packaging, letterheads, business cards, just anything. And does your online presence match, the offline presence? Is your website suitable? Is your email marketing using the same tone of voice as your social media? Because lots of companies outsource people for their social media, but they do their email marketing, or they might use someone else. Is it all joined up? Because we need all of those touch points to match and be consistent. So reviewing all of your external branding, check your website, check your logo, check how you speak. One of my favorite ways of identifying the perfect tone of voice is just listen to your customers. What are the words they use? How do they like to be spoken to? And start to replicate that as your ideal customer. Obviously, I'm aware some people work with lots of people and you think, actually, that isn't my ideal customer. I want to pivot, and therefore you need to adjust your brand to reach and speak to that new audience. But it's a great exercise that you can run. And the third part, I think, is customer experience. I think often we miss this. What do people actually? How do they actually perceive you? What's the sales process like? What's the customer support like? I was thinking this morning of some examples, and actually, with your brand, you don't own it. It's owned by other people, the perception. And I realized that, Herm is obviously rebranded to Every, whatever it is, because they were just known for not even delivering parcels. And they completely changed their name and completely rebranded. And they only sort of really knew about that because of everyone else's perception of them. So how do you do this? Well, survey your existing customers, ask them, how does the brand make you feel? Would you recommend us to friends and family? Ask them, how good is the customer service? Or more importantly, maybe how could we improve our customer service? What do you think of our logo? Just ask your existing customers is a great way to get some feedback on why they use you. And sometimes they use you for reasons you don't necessarily think. You think it's because you're delivering this great product or service, but actually they really like it. But that when they phone up with a problem, you answer the phone, and you start to think, okay, customer service is a big part. It's not just delivering the service that that you do. And bearing in mind, again, most SMEs, none of us are overly unique. We've got our own little traits, but actually we offer a service that someone else offers as well. I'm aware in the room we've got marketers and graphic designers and things like that. And I wouldn't dare claim we're to a penny, but there's you pop into Hastings, St Leonard's, and this local area, you'll find 3 or 4 graphic designers, and all of them will do a great job. But it's everyone's got their own little skill set. But how do you actually make someone feel? I guess it's not always just about the end product. How do you make someone feel on that process? Survey those who aren't your customers, but are in your target audience. That's really important. Don't just ask your mum, that might not be relevant. Ask people who, maybe have got another supplier or don't even know you exist. Have you ever heard of this brand? How would you describe this brand to others? And you might hear them say, oh, well, their budget, or they're out of my price range. And you start to think, well, actually, no, that's not the case. But maybe you've positioned yourself slightly wrong in that ideal target audience. Again, how does that brand make you feel? And one that I think lots of people miss is surveying your employees. I'm a big believer that your employees will treat your customers in the same way you treat them. So I'm always amazed at these companies that basically treat their teams like crap, and then get reports of bad customer service. And it's like, because they don't care. They're treating your customers like you treat them. So the customer experience is essential. It's the reason people repeat buy. It's the reason people recommend. And one of the strongest ways that actually you can grow your brand is get other people sing your praises and talk to you about it. So once you've been through that process, I always just highlight what's good and plug any gaps. There's always going to be good bits in there, in any review. There always is. But where do you need to put your time and effort? And I know Greg's here, but I'd say you don't just have to redo your logo. That isn't your brand. Maybe there's something else that you need to look at first. I love a good visual rebrand. I probably do it far too often, but because you feel like you're fixing a problem, but sometimes actually there's some core issues based around the processes that you've got that need looking at first. So the little checklist I'd like to run, is your mission and vision still relevant? You've got to understand why you're in business, and why customers would buy from you. Make sure your visuals and online presence match where you want to be positioned. And then ensure every customer touch point is branded so that they know that it's you. So that's all I've got for you today.